Okay, g'day again. So we're at the 17th. All of this, by the way, I have decided is now because Facebook only posts for 30 days before it cans you. So I'm porting it, bumping it all over to DEE TV Australia. I didn't realise there were so many people who'd already grabbed onto that handle, but too bad. I've chosen it and I'm trying to gradually migrate this material over there. So we are now at Friday the 17th of November 2023. And I'm going to start to read some of the absolute shitfuckery. I've just got off the phone for 20 minutes from the Federal Attorney General, Mark Dreyfus's office. Again, he seems like a really nice guy. And trying to point out to him that they refused, they being the Sydney Family Law Court, Nate Ross is his name, and then a woman who's a registrar called just one moment. Can't believe it. Brucknell. All of which, has got to be triple backed up to the cloud in case the cranky old iMac dies after 10 years, which it's looking at doing. What I'm going to do today, because I know that most people would go, well, how did she lose them in the first place? And I've tried to explain to you that the timeline, which is absolutely hideous, goes that in June, on the 14th of June 2016, my mother died, and 12 weeks later, on the 13th of September 2016, her stepbrother, who was like her real brother, but wasn't, so therefore was like an uncle to me. My godfather, Warren Rogers, murdered his wife with a pillow after 45 years of marriage at Milpera, and simultaneous to all of this, like literally it's Shakespearean, it actually is, because at the very moment that my mother died, my own reproductive system started hemorrhaging, and it grew into a tumour down in my cervix, and I was put by Deb Wilcox, who's no longer the CEO of Northern, don't know who that is, who's just jumped on Northern Area Health in Sydney at Royal North Shore, put me on a 5-week-long wait list, as I've explained. This is just covering off the contextual preamble. Covering off the context is that this is the background to how this situation evolved. And so I'm bleeding to death, mum's died, there's been a murder, and our family law court case comes up at exactly that moment, which is November 2016, and lo and behold, this piece of shit called Federal Magistrate Leanne Turner, after this absolute negligent moron called Dr. Lucia Vardenegger, and you're like, oh, well, why is she swearing and calling people these names? Like, she's clearly got a problem, everyone's wrong except her. So she's clearly so self-deluded. This is the argument that the evil mount, that I can't see, that I lack insight, say, for example, and blaming everyone else. Well, I'm not, because these people have form. Just like if you go over to Netflix and type in Take Care of Maya, you will see that Dr. Sally Smith had form as well. She had form with hundreds of families, and so did the people around her who were professionals in psychiatry for children, paediatric psychiatry, and kept a loved and loving child from a mother who then suicided on day 87 of her child being removed from her by the state of Florida, despite the fact that the hospital was was simultaneously billing the mother and father, and the mother was a registered nurse, so like that should have given you everything you need to know. She's a reliable human being. And they accused her of having Munchausen-by proxy syndrome and inventing an illness in her daughter in order to get attention for herself. The fucking height of it. And then on top of the triple hide with Pike was that they actually, in their somersault and their disgraceful somersault, they were simultaneously billing, unbeknownst to the parents at the time, but this has all come out because the father, who's now the remaining only parent of Kyle and Maya Kowalski. Not Mike Kowalski from Monsters Inc., but not Mike Kowalski from Monsters Inc., but Beata, the woman who hung herself in her garage on day 87, spoiler alert, too late, after her child, Maya Kowalski, and was stolen by the state of Florida in 2017 and 18. Exactly the same time period, by the way, coincidentally, in which I'm talking about in my case, these matters played out. And so I've got this blow-off letter from Jennifer, who's a case manager, saying that registrar yesterday in the Sydney FLC and her name is, it says contravention application rejection. And her name, and I've just been on the phone to, for God's sake, it won't open. Here we go. Bucknall, Bucknal, Deputy Registrar Bucknall. And remember, I think I tried to tell you yesterday that she rejected, this is the rejection letter, 16th of November, and we're on the 17th of November. And the rejection letter is because part A of the application has not been completed. Well, that's complete horseshit. I was in there for 2 hours. I did it in front of a young, lovely, helpful guy who then seemed to not do his work properly, called Nate Ross. And they said part A of the application has not been completed. Well, that's not true. When I asked them today, when I phoned him and said, what part hasn't been completed? He went, oh, you didn't tick a box saying you're the applicant parent. And I said, well, part B says who is the applicant and who's the respondent. So you've got that right underneath. So did you not think when you were with me for 2 hours to cover off that maybe you should have just said that I could have ticked? You're going to reject this case being heard where a child has been kept from her mother and a mother from her child for 3 years because I didn't tick a box literally. Is that what you're telling me? Yeah. Really? What? Even though it's the very next question is a reiteration of what the question before was, which answers the question, which is who's the applicant mother? Well, it's me. I'm the applicant mother in a family law court case. Tick. No, this is fucking genius. These people are on 130 grand a year. No shit. And then you go down to, and part D of the application has not been properly completed. You have included evidence about the alleged contraventions as specified in the application. For example, at item 7, do not set out the evidence upon which you rely. Do that in an affidavit. Well, the affidavit's 150 pages fucking long. I mean, it took me like 1.5 years when I could stumble through the trauma of being re-traumatised by it to complete it. So there's definitely a stamped, witnessed, everything affidavit. But they want me to sit there, like I tried to explain to you yesterday, so just to cover this off again, they want me to sit there and to reiterate to list explicitly, not reiterate, to reiterate in pen every single date in the last 3 years in which Ian Little took my child from me. Not just like, well, from October 2020 till now, because there's too many dates to mention under the parenting orders that I had. So I'm going to publish this along with lots of other things. I'm going to publish this because that's in the public interest to do so. And go David McBride. And go Julian Assange too. It's in the public interest to do this because this out-of-control welfare state and non-functioning family law court system, and I thought that I'd do a couple of reads today, getting back to the original top of the point, which is everyone must be thinking, well, why did the judge really give the child away then in the first place? And as I've told you, our November 2016 self-defended, I had no lawyer, bleeding to death. My mum had just died and her stepbrother, my godfather, murders his wife. So I've got all defences are down, and that's the moment when our family law court case comes up to be heard in a hearing after 2 years in train. And so we then get a judge, Federal Magistrate Leanne Turner, who's got no prior carriage of the matter whatsoever, halves the trial dates from 4 days down to 2, which disallows me to go and get updated affidavit material from Ian Little's ex-partners, who he's abused, on the police record, which is automatically subpoenaed. Sorry, I look old and grey and cranky and dry and had it because I am. It's like it happened like that. Once you lose everybody who you love, you are done. That tell me you cannot live. I always thought it was a hippie saying, you can't live without love. Oh, yeah, bullshit. A job and some friends would do. But, you got none of those, then you've got literally nothing. And I literally don't anymore. So I'm going to out this system. I'm going to take it apart systemically like it has done me. I'm going to systemically take this system apart and show the idiocy and the mendacity and the bullshit and the shit fuckery of it for what it's worth. Because to get back to the point, November 2016, I gave you the timeline above, comes along and we get the wrong judge, Federal Magistrate Leanne Turner. She halves the court days from the trial from 4 to 2. Now, I had no idea why she would do that, and upon reflection, she's from Brisbane, ported down, parachuted into the Sydney Family Law Court, so it's like, oh, she wants to see the Opera House, clearly. So clearly this self-serving fuckwit halves our court days because she reckons she's got this easy work, isn't it? She's got it cut out. Well, the independent court reporter, Dr. Lucia Vardenega, hello, who hides up in the Blue Mountains and then comes down and does family law court work. I requested a Regulation 7 reporter because of his domestic violence with his 2 other partners before me, and so she fails to take any stock of the complete set of context of trauma that I'm in, and suggests a 5-year-old girl be ruled away from her mother and her loving half-brother Augustus, and her mother's just run a daycare service immaculately for 50 hours a week for 4 years beforehand, up until the year before, and this mother's mother has just died, and this mother's stepbrother, my godfather, has just murdered his wife, and this mother's reproductive system is hemorrhaging out, and so she suggests, like, what a moron, what a kind of vicious bitch, she suggests in this context that my little 5-year-old girl be ruled away to a man who abused me and 3 other women on the police record. 2 were on the police record, 3 were available for evidence. And so Federal Magistrate Leanne Turner heeds the word of Dr. Lucia Vardenega and rules out of evidence an affidavit from Lindy Sue Green, Ian Little's ex-wife, because it was older than 1 year by the time we got to trial. And she had her coccyx bone chipped when he kicked her up the arse in front of their kids on Christmas Day. And on top of that, she said, oh, that was only once or twice that he abused me physically, but the verbal and emotional and mental abuse was constant. And then, of course, a man that he lived with called Stephen Hobbs called him a psychopath. And then the other woman he went out with between his wife and I only lasted 10 months before I got the hell out of there, 2 abortions down and a 3rd pregnancy. And that's all explained in previous videos as well here and over at YouTube. This woman says, Michelle Daly, who's a senior eye care bureaucrat, says, yeah, he's actually deeply unwell. And yet Leanne Turner, federal magistrate, and Dr. Lucia Vardenega choose to ignore 3 women on the police record over 25 years who've all been partners of Ian Little, ignore the evidence of his abuse, even in voice recordings that were totally admissible because they were left on my voicemail machine. And I didn't know, but if I had been given the 4-day trial by Leanne Turner, cunning stunt that she was, instead of 2, then I could have gone and ordered an Ausscript transcript. Ausscript are the official agency transcribing her, and I could have called her as a witness. But of course she lives in, a security unit, so I can't serve her papers to say, come to court, I've got a subpoena. I couldn't get a subpoena because I was too busy 50 hours a week running a federal government regulated family daycare service. And so thus, a ruling, which I'm now going to read to you from to get back to the top of it, the original point. A ruling comes down on the 28th of February 2017, 1 month after my daughter Madeline Little, who by then was... am I still there? Hello? Yep, I hopefully am still there. Sorry, John, I'll call you back. So after all of this goes down, I then have a 5-year-old ruled away from me and Matt Crosby and Augie, Madeline's half-brother, whose father has died. So the point is, I hope I'm still there, everybody. I'm actually building, part of the calls that I'm building a pool of adults who are prepared bravely to speak to camera in a documentary about what this has done to their lives. These are loving, caring, beautiful people, like well-regarded. I mean, I don't give a damn personally anymore at 52. I don't care. And given the lies and the hideousness of what's gone on around me, from the family law court system to the men who deliberately aided and abetted each other to remove my children, who loved, go over to Instagram, you'll see all the proof there, who loved their mother dearly and who were dearly loved by their mother at ice skating and skiing and tennis lessons and swimming and beaches and books and academic achievement and laughter and dancing and music and healthy food and absolutely everything. And as I said, you go down here to Wollongong and you see these bogans who feed their kids, chitzels for breakfast and call them a little cunt and smoke around them and they're on ice and they've still got their kids, and you just go, how the fuck does this system work? Like, this is disgraceful. So again, this is going out to you, Kate Washington, because it's not your screw up, but you're maintaining it. Natasha McLaren Jones from the LNP, who I mentioned yesterday. got it before you. So to go back and cover off a couple of other points that I started with at the top of this broadcast, people would think, well, why? How did she lose them? What was the ruling? So on top of, I'm going to do two things. I'm going to read some absolutely revelatory, in my humble opinion, pieces of the transcripts, or pieces of writing, the words of Federal Magistrate Leanne Turner in the Family Law Court when she was questioning me, and these are questions she made of me in the court. She, obviously is so brain dead that she didn't take into account any of the things I just told you about. My mum's recent death and the murder by my godfather of his wife, and the fact I'm bleeding to death and requiring to sell my house to pay for an emergency hysterectomy and risking losing my 5-year-old to a man who abused me and 2 other women before me on the police record, and 3 in total. And so none of this seems to be relevant to her whatsoever. She's got that much professional and or insight and or basic lack thereof, or lack of basic human empathy, this woman, Federal Magistrate Leanne Turner, that she proceeds to make the questioning of me, which she then puts into the ruling. So the ruling is when she cites the evidence that she uses to have drawn the conclusions that she did. And so she cites that evidence. And so I'm going to read from some of that, because this is what was going on in her pea brain, that she thought it appropriate to question a woman's behaviour who was going through everything I just described to you, which is just trauma and total depression and grief from things that were happening outside of me. Murders and deaths, and inside of me, hemorrhages, and court cases that came up at the wrong time. And so all of these things are happening. And so I'm going to read these transcripts, a couple of them, because as well, so we've got a family law court. Now remember, that's the federal jurisdiction. That's Mark Dreyfus's portfolio. Poor man just lost his much-loved wife. And this is I think it's an 87-page ruling of my daughter, my 5-year-old daughter, as this idiot, Leanne Turner, rules her at 5 years of age away to a man who's abused 3 women, when I've just spent 4 years immaculately running a federal government regulated family daycare childcare centre, and bought 2 houses by that stage, unlike the father, and hadn't assaulted any of my previous partners, unlike the father, who also himself had not run a childcare service. You can't make this shit up. So I'm going to read from part of the ruling, and of course to protect a child's privacy, they don't ever name the parties when they list the rulings up on the Family Law Court website. They make approximations of the name. So in the case that I'm Farrow-Pryke and it was Tim Friedman, it got an approximation of something like Farquhar and Ferronde or something like that, so ingenious. They even sort of phonetically make phonetic approximations of your real name in order to, make rulings so that other judges can refer to rulings, and so that the court can keep wending its way into Homo sapiens' imminent demise within infinity. And so I'm also then going to read from this thing here, and this is an affidavit that was prepared by a fuckwit called Nikki Strong, and she and her immediate superior Jacqueline Kilman laughed at me when my son Augustus Augie Farrow-Pryke told them for 3 years straight through his direct legal representative, Dennis Chapman, that he wished to be given back to me because he never should have been taken. I just had a nervous breakdown from trauma and stress. And so as I'm going to do a quick flick through these pages, because you'll see that not only have I marked it up with, what do you call it? Pen, fluoro pen, with fluorescent pen. You'll see that I've marked it up, but you'll see that huge amounts of it I'll show you an example here. Some of them are screenshots. Some of them are just this, like huge amounts of it. I actually did a breakdown of their affidavit when I took them through the district court. Again, self-represented and undefended. And this is what counted for a page in their affidavit. Right? That. And then some that. Fact, day, something with nothing beside it. So just a piece of bullshit. Like nothing there at all. There's no evidence there at all. And huge amounts of this are exactly the same. For example, there, just date, time, nothing. Just what you'd call all filler, no killer. It's the opposite to a good record that you'd listen to, right? A great music recording's got all killer, no filler. Well, this is the dead set opposite. It's all killer, no filler. I mean, all filler, no killer. And they're, again, it's just, ingenious. Just slabs of nothing. So I'm going to read, again, well, here we go. There's another slab of nothing. Just a screenshot of someone who filled in a form on a day and said that, whatever that is, they said that, and they took 2 pages to say what that is. And that's a state government department. So if you want to look at the Netflix documentary Take Care of Maya, where the mother hung herself on day 87 as a registered nurse because they lied about her, said she had Munchausen's via proxy. Her firefighter husband was told that he couldn't even see his daughter, and the judge agreed with the doctors and said, no, this child doesn't have anything wrong with her whatsoever, which she very much did. And then they simultaneously billed the parents, Beata Kowalski, and her husband's health insurance company for the exact condition. The hospital billed the parents' healthcare insurance company for the exact condition that they claimed that the child didn't have. Which is why last month on the September the 11th, 2023, after 5 years of Florida state trying to keep them out in stay motions, as it's called in America, keep them out of the legal system. Beata Kowalski, Maya, Take Care of Maya, Maya's father, and her poor brother Kyle. Kyle's actually come off worse in some ways. I mean, they've all come off worse. They've all come off atrociously because their mother's dead. The wife and the mother of them are dead. Their mother's dead. They've all come off poorly, but they're suing for $200 million, and that's part of the reason I'm going to keep pushing you over to my GoFundMe page, because I'm going to get some money up and I'm going to sue these fuckers. I'm selling my house to do it as well. And so in the state welfare system in New South Wales, who stole my child against his express wishes, saying I want to be restored to what I was called was a loving and educational parent, and I was called that in February, on the 21st of February 2021, in Woy Woy Children's Court by Magistrate Stubbs, S-T-U-B-B, bottom S, Stubbs. She's retired now, and she was a good egg, and she called me a loving and educational mother. But they believed that, but they figured that I was so overwhelmed with grief because on top of it, I then got stuck in a border closure and COVID #1 lockdown interstate, and my partner left me after 5 years to top it all off for a woman worth $20 million after running me down after hours. It's just, and then my father, on the 4th anniversary of my mother's death, and she died on the 14th of June 2016. So my father, Leslie John Farrow-Pryke, or his witch of a wife, Wendy Starkey, who owned $5 million worth of beachfront property at Newport, and then nonetheless tried to sue my father's own single parent daughter, Natasha, in the Manly local court, and they did it. Promised me that they wouldn't. They promised me they would cease and desist. When I found out in April, stuck in lockdown in 2020, that's what they were doing, I rang my dad up. I said, is this true? Because he sent me an email out of the blue saying that he was going to do it, and saying, if you know where she is, tell me where we'll settle for this $25,000 today, this week, or if we proceed to court in Manly, it'll be $40,000. And I rang him up and I'm like, are you Gina Reinhart of the Northern Beaches? Are you on drugs? Are you all right? Like, do you honestly, are you okay? This is your daughter who nursed your wife to the grave as a single mother herself, running a business, a shop that she bought off my sister Elise Johnson. And this is all in 2016, all going on at the same time. And so he chose to sue her because when she sold her shop, there was only a pathetic $70,000 profit. And Natasha can do anything. She's a NIDA graduate. She literally is as good as Kate Blanchett, and she can out-sing Justine Clark, as John Schofield said. G'day, Scully. You can't, you know all about this, right? You said that, you know, like she really is an amazing everything and incredible designer, an incredible sports person, incredible singer, incredible interior decorator. She's also imperious and arrogant and, you know, shoots herself at the foot. And also stabbed me in the back, which I found out when I subpoenaed this material. I found out what everybody said. And so this... I'm going to read from it because this is the sum total of what these fuckwits have against me and my children. I'm going to just keep on doing these broadcasts and reading more and more of what passes because, again, to return... sorry, John, look at Facebook. I'm live. I'll call you back. To return to the point of the Netflix special documentary Take Care of Maya, which is just an international outrage. It's a success for all the right and wrong reasons. The right reasons because it's a very well-made documentary, and there's the wrong reasons because it never should have had to have been made. It took them 5 years at Storytime in New York to make it, and they did an incredible job, so that's the right reasons. But as soon as Daphne Chen, like I said, published her article about this tragedy, she went to bed and thinking that'd be the end of it, and then she woke up the next day, there were 200 emails in her inbox just from people in Florida alone who'd had their children stolen from them by state welfare, and some of these parents were in jail for trying to protect, just for taking their children down to a hospital and then being incorrectly charged with abuse. And whereas, like, I've got all this evidence pouring out, as I said yesterday, every orifice, out my everything, like written evidence that there's nothing wrong with myself and my children other than the depression that I suffered as a result of external stressors and a resultant nervous breakdown. And anyone who hears the story goes, well, fuck, you know, I'm out. I would have been out as well. Like, that is absolutely shit. And so I'm going to read it. So the point of it is that this is exactly what's happening in Australia, because the Northern Territory is number 1 and New South Wales is number 2 on Earth, on the whole of the planet, for the removal of children per capita. So they remove more children from parents per capita when you average out how many people are here and they're stealing them from. They remove, Northern Territory number 1 and New South Wales number 2, more children on Earth than any other place. They are number 1 and number 2 for stealing children. These vicious, and caseworkers in New South Wales, I found out, mainly because I was reduced at one point to being an Uber driver, and I dropped somebody home up around Long Jetty in 2019. And I said, oh, you know, what are you doing? What's your situation? You have a chat, and if they want to chat, you chat back, and if they don't, you don't. And so he said, oh, I'm seeing this woman, you know, and so I've moved down here because this is where she works. Oh, yeah, what's she do? Oh, she's a caseworker for DOCS, FACS, Family and Community Services, Department of Community Services, DCJ they are this year. You know, you can't keep up with them. There's something different every 5 years. God knows what their letterhead and stationery costs are from the change of name, but I do digress. DCJ, and I said, oh yeah, but do you mind me asking, do you know like what she's on, like no names? And it's $130,000 a year. And I said, fucking get the what? She said, yeah, no, they really are. And I said, is that normal, or is she doing casual work with loading or something as a contract? He went, no, that's she's retained full time. She's on $130,000 a year. So here we've got a woman called Michelle Douglas, you bitch. On Michelle Douglas, double L-E and double S at the end of Douglas. And on the 23rd of April 2020, before my son was placed with a man who'd abused 3 women on the police record, including me, and doesn't want to pay child support, so has kept my children from me totally since Christmas Day. This woman is a caseworker in April 2020, which is 3.5 years ago, before my son was placed with Ian Little and when he was still with my sister, who then despite her fake tits and marrying into wealth on the northern beaches at Avalon, tried to give my son away to a foster carer called Yale Michelle. Before DCJ stepped in under Michael Coots-Trotter, Tanya Plibber's ex-husband, and placed him with a man who'd abused me and three other people, even though I was sitting there the whole time battling my way out of depression and border isolation in COVID and all of this stuff, going, help, no, I'm here, I want him back. And he's telling his direct legal representative, Dennis Chapman and Gosford, the whole time, I want to be back with my mum. Augustus stated he would like to organise more video calls with his mother. Danielle also agreed with this. Michelle, this is the idiot caseworker, stated she would attempt to organise another video call for Friday and will develop a routine with the video calls going forward. And they took the entire page to say that. But the real killer, I mean, again, I just flip open again, and then there's more, it's like a computer threw up. It's just like a page of dribble. There's nothing there. So I went through and broke it all down and how much dribble. Or just, oh, here we go again, just like another page. You can see that I haven't marked it. I'm not flipping it over to them. I'm just randomly opening pages, and this is what constitutes the DCJ, who I will be suing for spectacular millions of dollars any minute. This is what constitutes this stuff here, just like empty pages of boxes. This is what constitutes their affidavit. But what I did get, what I subpoenaed was supervised, because they subjected my son and me for 2 years, again, like I've told you on previous broadcasts, twice a week for 2 hours. So 4 hours a week for 2 years. So like 400 hours. And so I subpoenaed their supervised visits. And this is one from 2019. When we arrived at the ferry terminal, Danielle walked over to the toilets. The worker stayed with Augie. On Danielle's return, she held out her arms. I needed to take a leak. And said, we should make use of the time we have left, or words to that effect. Danielle and Augie hugged until carer arrived, even though the carer just said that they were already there. Worker texted carer, oh sorry, that's my sister, at 6:05 that they were at the ferry terminal. Carer arrived at 6:11. Augie jumped back in the car. Danielle and carer had a conversation through the car window. Danielle blew Augie kisses and said, I love you, before she walked away from the car. And of course they left out the bit where it obviously held him. Here's one, 23rd of the 12th, 2020. So here we go. This is my birthday, and I'm 50. But for some reason it's written on the 30th of the 9th, 2020. So I didn't turn 50 until the 23rd of December, 2020. But this is printed on the 30th of September, 2020. It was Danielle's birthday. We met at the park house at Mona Vale. Augie had a gift for Danielle and had made her a lovely card. Danielle was thrilled. Augie was very affectionate, as always, with his mum. She bought him tacos, which he enjoyed. Everything was going well. Until Danielle brought up a solicitor's report that had been emailed to her that was an interview with Augie. And Danielle questioned him about the statement, asking if he was happier with Elise. And he said he didn't want to live with her again. Danielle was upset, and Augie felt extremely confronted. He said he actually hadn't said that, and that his words had been summarised and taken out of context. He cried. I am really surprised to hear that a conversation that Augie had with his solicitor, that he believed at the time was not going to be seen by his mother, was transcribed and emailed to his mum. It felt to me like a breach of privacy, and for future conversations Augie will have with his solicitor, he will therefore be careful and perhaps dishonest with his solicitor about the way he feels, just because he doesn't want to upset his mum. Even though the whole time he'd been telling them for 3 years consistently that he wished to be restored to me. And the judge who was presiding, Magistrate Stubbs at Woy Woy, said that you are a loving and educational mother. The visit then went back on track and we walked to the bookshop where Augie and his mum looked at many kids' books. Danielle bought Augie a new book and he was very happy. Ironically, I believe that book was called Boy Swallows Universe by Trent Dalton. And then ironically it is because last year my son made it down to the final 2 actors who were being auditioned for the lead role of Trent Dalton. But of course, who would want to deal with DCJ and all their shit fuckery, constantly having to wait 12 weeks until you got an answer back when you're running a film set? So he didn't get it. But he will one day. He was born to be great. And I'm not going to just say that because he's a son of mine. I could feel him in my belly. Here's another. Wesley Mission is a third-party procured Christian organisation procured by DCJ to run supervised care visits. And again, this is with a woman with a university degree who's bought 3 properties by herself without a cent from anyone, who's got glowing references from her childcare clients that she ran 50 hours a week alone for 4 years, coming out of her orifices and definitely her computer, and who's been a professional nanny and who hasn't assaulted any partners and has bought a house and has a uni degree. This is by a woman called Christina Board, and it's made on the 13th of July 2020. Again, he was placed with Ian Little in February 2021, and he was still on the week that he was placed with Ian Little in February 2021. Sorry, he was placed with Ian in December when my sister gave him away at Christmas in 2020. So Ian got him in January 2021, and in February he'd just gone to Ian's at the end of the school holidays up on the northern beaches, so it was Jan-Feb 2021, and he was still telling his direct legal representative, Dennis Chapman, that he wished to be restored to his loving and educational mother. So it says here that we're in the Monaval Library because I always met him at the library so we could read and hug and have an intimate home-like environment. And this is about the Ballad of the Songbirds and Sharks. Augustus sat on Danielle's lap. Danielle stated it was a sequel to a book that he already had. So I bought him lots and lots of books. All of my children had books. Augustus sat on Danielle's lap as they talked about the book, as well as Augustus's selective school results. Danielle looked up the results on her phone and she also congratulated Augustus for being selected. Danielle mentioned each mark that Augie received, stating his writing test was his highest mark, and Augie asked, "Mum, do you know that I'm in? Do you know that I'm in?" meaning into a selective school. And I said, yes, a caseworker has phoned and told me congratulations. So, I obviously said it better than that, like, congratulations, yeah, I've heard. So he got into a selective school. But despite this, Ian Little enrolled him at a dipshit school, one of the worst NAPLAN performing schools in Australia. No offence to them, I'm sure they all work very hard. It was a boys' school out at Hurstville called, I can't remember, I'll remember it in a minute. Danielle asked Augie to start reading his book. She excused herself, said she needed to use a phone. When she returned, Augie told her he was hungry. He said he wanted to eat sushi. After a couple of choices and conversations, including playing soccer, they spoke about Augie's 2 sisters, Alice and Madeline, briefly. Danielle asked Augie, "Do you still have apples every day? Because I used to give him 6. This is how many he wanted. And he was never, ever, ever ill. 6 Granny Smiths." Danielle remarked he used to have 4 Granny Smith's apples a day when it was me. Well, he had a minimum of 4. They spoke about human time on Earth, religion, planets, and other topics. And that's very pertinent because the Christmas gift that I bought for my children this year was a ticket to see Professor Brian Cox at the Sydney Opera House with the Sydney Symphony Orchestra playing in the background, and huge projections of photos of the universe and stars and, the cradles of all of creation, all of evolution of atoms, more correctly. And God knows what put that all there, hey? And he doesn't want to come. I just received the word today that he doesn't want to come. Now that he's been with Ian Little for 2.5 years, doesn't want to see me, and he doesn't want to come. We used to hug and laugh and talk and read. So again, go find someone rich, because I'm going to sue the arse off these motherfuckers. Now I'm going to read to you from the ruling in the case for my daughter Madeline Little, which preceded my nervous breakdown, which then, of course, had my son go to a man who abused me after my sister gave him away. Now, this is how fucked up Federal Magistrate Leanne Turner is. She says to me, so in her ruling, she, and again, she had no prior carriage of our matter, so she comes in and takes one look at the independent report, and that's the report in which my little daughter, at 5 years old, at 10 in the morning when she came in to meet the court reporter, Lucia Vardanega, had ice cream running down her face, tears running down her face at 10 a.m. in the morning with Kelly MacDonald Payne and Ian Little. And she came running towards me and with her arms out to hug me. I'd been away from her for 2 weeks by this stage. I think it was 1 week, sorry. And at 10 a.m. in the morning, she'd been fed ice cream by her father. And she said, Mummy, Daddy told me that if I don't live with him, I'll never see him again. So he lied to her. The cunning, manipulative piece of shit that he is, he lied to her and scared her that she'd never see her dada again if she didn't say to the court reporter that she wanted to live with him at 10 in the morning with ice cream on her face. I told the court reporter, Lucia Vardanega, this. This idiot Vardanega did not put it in her report. She left that bit out. So now I'm reading from a transcript in the federal jurisdiction of the Family Law Court. And it's by, again, this mendacious and literally negligent asshole called Federal Magistrate Leanne Turner. And, of course, they don't fire these judges because it takes a hell of a lot of experience to be made into a judge. So she cites herself in the transcript of our interaction. I'm self-defended, as I said, bleeding to death, risking losing my 5-year-old, having to sell my home to pay for the hysterectomy. Mum's died, his stepbrother's murdered his wife. My partner's constantly threatening to leave, and I'm self-defending and bleeding to death, and I've lost my mother in grief, and her stepbrother, lives like my uncle's murdered his wife. All in the space of June to November 2016. All of that in the space of 4 months. Not like these females give a shit about facts, evidence of trauma. All of the subsequent psychiatrists and psychologists have, though, just not Dr. Gavin Angus Lapan at Concord or Dr. Reddy. And remember, I told you Dr. Reddy's sister was subsequently butchered to death, chopped up into hundreds of pieces by a Tinder date who stalked her and then murdered her 2 dates later when she rejected him, and then drove himself at high speed into a Mack truck 4 hours north of Sydney on the north coast. Hope you're enjoying your loving partner and your professional work out there and your lovely home and your happy, stable, well-made lives, because it doesn't go like that for everybody, even though they gave it their best shot. So here, Leanne Turner, Her Honour says, No, but I'm talking about your overall presentation. You put yourself in boxes in respect to how you are at home, how you are at a workplace, how you are at an interview, how you are if you're promoting something. How would you describe your behaviours over the last 2 days? Now, remember, this is the 2 days that she cut from 4 days because the trial was meant to be 4 days, which would have provided me the opportunity to get updated and therefore admissible because she ruled an affidavit out for being older than 1 year, as if murder's irrelevant after 1 year, from Ian Little's ex-wife, Lindy Green. And by the time we got to trial, that affidavit was older than 1 year. And I, being not a lawyer, had no idea that this affidavit was out of date because, I mean, it's describing a pattern of behaviour that's corroborated by the New South Wales police record, which was subpoenaed by the court, and it's still the statement of facts about what had been done to her. So how is that out of date? You know, it's not out of date. It's never going to be out of date, particularly not when it's happened to me and the woman in between as well. It's called a pattern of behaviour and substantiating a pattern of behaviour. So she rules it out. And then rules out, remember I told you, the admissible voicemail of Michelle Daly because I said, well, you can listen to it. She went, no. And I said, well, I've transcribed it into my affidavit. She went, well, do you have a transcriber's qualification? And I went, well, no, I've got a university degree and we're both speaking English. I can hear it. And like, here it is. Do you want to hear it? No. You heard me. You heard me, she said. I'm like, what the fuck is your problem? Like, no. How about we hear from the person who's speaking, who's left it on my voicemail? So it's perfectly admissible because she knows she's being recorded. So how about we do that? No! Cunning stunt. So Her Honour asked me, I'm talking about your overall presentation, and I just told you, remember, all the grief, all the stress, all the trauma. My mum's died, there's a murder, I'm bleeding to death, I'm losing my 5-year-old, potentially, I'm losing my house to pay to save my life, so I'm losing my access to all my children in a rainforest. So, like, she's got no fucking cognizance whatsoever, this idiot, at this stage. And so she does what's commonly known in the trade as character assassination. And she says, so how would you describe your behaviours over the last 2 days when it should have been a 4-day hearing? So this is coming towards the end of it. And I say, well, which ones? When I was asking questions of Mr. Little and then the judge, Leanne Turner, says, all of them. That's a lot. Generally. And so I say, overall? Question mark. I'm extremely frustrated with this court system. I'm extremely frustrated and I'm attempting to remain articulate about the exact reasons for my frustrations. I'm finding it very frustrating to be disbelieved about Ian Little's violence because I can't prove what has gone on behind closed doors. It has become a matter of he said, she said. This is still me, so this is the judge in her ruling quoting me. When there's actual evidence on the police record, and the police record seems to be being disbelieved. I'm guilty of seeing this courtroom, this is me speaking, to my credit. I'm guilty of seeing this courtroom as emblematic of the power structures in society with respect to gender and the failure of women to be represented properly in proper ways in Parliament. I don't think that there's any dispute that we're 51% of the population and we're like 12% of the federal parliament. This is 2017. I see the violence that just happened in my family 6 weeks ago. That's my godfather murdering his wife after 45 years. Where the man whose arms I was cradled in my christening photo murdered his wife for 45 years. And their neighbours said that he was the nicest everyday guy you could imagine. And that they walked around the neighbourhood hand in hand for years. And that man was my mother's stepbrother. They've misquoted it as my brother's stepbrother. I don't even have a brother, so that's a misquote. My mother's stepbrother. I was assaulted on a main street, and I was, by Michael Ives in Ettalong, and he got away with it. And he walked from Woy Woy Court because no witnesses wanted to come forward. And yet there were people in the restaurant next to where I was assaulted, and I walked up to them and said, did you see that? And they declined because, as one old Italian woman said to me, we don't want any of your problem. And I'm in this courtroom and I can't get Lindy Green, this is Ian Little's ex-wife, to come here because she doesn't want to attest to what Ian did to her. And Michelle Daly doesn't want to attest. All over the world, women are cowered into not speaking out. This is 2017. This is before Me Too, obviously, and not like that should have mattered at all. In fact, as Lindy Green said in her affidavit, I did not press charges for fear of consequences. And you women, this is me speaking to the judge and Lucia Vardenega, are in this courtroom and I can't get anywhere in trying to communicate to you what I have been subjected to. So I think my frustration's understandable. And Mark Dreyfus and Rochelle White, who's the policy advisor to Katie Gallagher, this is the shit that you need to read. This stuff is what you need to read, and this is why you need to have a meeting with me in Canberra next week, where I tried to come this week. Because this stuff is what a sitting court member in the Federal Circuit Family Law Court used against me to argue that I was somehow, out of order? Political statements. She then moves to, this is Federal Magistrate Leanne Turner from Brisbane, who's somehow fucking sitting like Jabba the Hutt in Sydney. The mother used the court process as a forum to repeatedly express her political views and to make political statements. No. Don't know when the last time that was illegal in a democracy. And it totally dovetails into what feminists call intersectionality, which is the intersection of, housing affordability and being abused by a man and bringing up children unpaid and workforce impediments that, you don't get to progress in your workforce because you're busy bringing up children unpaid. In both her affidavit material and in court, the mother vented and at times repeated almost word by word these vents on such topics as the Victorian Commission into Institutional Responses. It wasn't the Victorian, it's the Royal. Into institutional responses to domestic violence, World Health Organisation's reports, law reforms, people who describe suicidal ideations, articles in the Monthly, the murder rate of women in Australia, and the international rape of women. This is I'm going to give you the number so you can look it up. This is in the judge's report of why I didn't get my daughter at 5 and that she chose to place my 5-year-old daughter with a man who'd abused 3 women. Was that I was making political statements. No shit. It's here. It's on the record. Grandiose statements we go to after that. Get this. This is a beauty. Geez, I wish I had a bit more lippy. She called me complex. Ms. Farrow-Pryke is a highly complex woman. No. Am I? And? I love my daughter and my daughter loves me and all my children are succeeding and they're all happy and well. So what's that? Sorry, who the fuck are you? What, do you have kids? You don't get to ask that in a court of course. But, it would be highly relevant because she shouldn't actually even be there unless she's been through what children actually normally do. Grandiose statements. Repeatedly throughout the evidence, the mother indulged in grand self-serving comments, not like the man who'd violated and literally assaulted 3 women didn't serve himself by just looking like he was the nice, like butter wouldn't melt in his mouth. Indulged in self-serving comments such as, it says here, I'll read it to you. Ms. Farrow-Pryke described herself as an educator. Oh, wow, that's grandiose statements. An educator. Well, I wrote the first climate change program and toured around high schools with Q&As for a year, and I toured a show on insects and toured it to primary school students, and I'd run a daycare service, federal government regulated daycare service with prelingual children for 4 years for 50 hours a week by myself. And my children are at the top of the state and I've got a BA in communications. And I had a history of doing presentations of things like health, drink drunk, the difference is you, for high school students. Drunk, the difference is you. And I did that in front of Greedy, the late and great Greedy Smith. What a lovely man he was. He actually came up to me after this band competition that I emceed in about 1995 or 96 and said, that was really well done. I was like, wow. And, he really gave me a great rap. He was very, very nice to me. So Ms. Farrow-Pryke described herself, you can literally, I'll take a screenshot if you want, described herself as an educator, a clown, and a disciplinarian, and a parent who can speak philosophically to her children. She added that she does what she can, I wouldn't have used those words, so that's wrong, to bring up her children as, quote, intelligent, warm, respectful human beings, and that her children see her as the font of self-generated strength and willpower that I am. And that came from the 2016 family report. So because I stood up for myself and said I'm a single mother who educates and who's a clown and who's disciplined, I said disciplined, not disciplinarian, and I do what I can, well, I said more than what I can, to bring up my children as intelligent, warm, respectful human beings. That was a grandiose statement by this fuckwit, Leanne Turner's estimation. You better watch this. I'll make sure you do. There was a precedent recently in the family law court where Salvatore was sued beyond judicial immunity in the family law court division successfully for $350,000. Wait up, Leanne Turner, you got it coming. She said that in the court size she presents as defiant, but everyone else she meets marvels at her. This is a single mother bringing up 3 children and working 50 hours a week and buying 3 houses and having no support from anyone because my mum's got Parkinson's and my sister doesn't care about me and lives 40 kilometres away anyway, and the other one's in Japan singing at this point. In 2016, she'd just come back. And other people marvel at me and tell me that everyone else she meets marvels at her and tells her that they do not know how she manages. So because I said that about myself, this woman thinks I'm grandiose. Can you hear the gendered fucking nasty mendaciousness, the lies in this? In a question posed in cross-examination to the family report writer, the mother prefaced it by saying, how likely do you think it is? This is what I said. So here we go again. Here. In a question posed in cross-examination to the family report writer, the mother prefaced it by saying, how likely do you think it is on the balance of probabilities that a woman who has got not 1 but 2 children enrolled in school at the top of the grade, and yet, right at the very crux of the moment in 2015, when all this hell was raining down, was reported to facts as being suicidal. And yet, my son is a breath of fresh air, who's winning the spelling bee this year at school. He won the spelling bee. He's beautiful at maths and makes intelligent and wonderful contributions to class. That's what his teacher said about him. So let's just say that I'm having an absolutely crap time in my life. This is me. The judge is quoting me in her ruling. And the evidence that my children are still thriving, all of whom I have been the majority carer of for all of their lives, and that my children are doing just hunky-dory. And in fact, they're widely reported as beautiful, intelligent, loving, kind, wonderful kids by me, by facts caseworkers, by you in the court. So if the proof was in the pudding, as the old saying would go, then you've got to say, wow, there's this woman in this set of circumstances here that is just appalling, and maybe she deserved to call herself, quote, unquote, a fucking heroine with an E on it. And then in a question posed to the family report writer in cross-examination, the mother said, well, I'm a singer who's just produced a CD, and I'm actually a highly functional, quite reliable, 50 hours a week for 4 years by myself childcare service provider with 4 children. 50 hours a week for 4 years by myself childcare service provider. So that's quite reliable. That's an understatement. Nicely regulated person, except when I come into contact with people who are pretending that they aren't violent and atrocious to me, and that would have been a little. And so this is, again, rulings. This is a reading of a ruling from the family law transcript. Hi, John. Thank God you've just dropped in. So I'm good. I'm here. But I'm making sure that this is all seen, okay? Because I'm reading straight from the transcript of how a man who'd assaulted 3 women, including Lindy Green and Michelle Downey and myself, got my child at 5 years of age. And it's a female family law court judge called Leanne Turner, who I want dismissed. And so I'm reading from her ruling in the family law court, where she took my 5-year-old from me. And if you go back and watch it, because I'm going to post it here and I'm going to stick it across at YouTube, like I've said. Questionable complaints. This is the next part. This is a judge in a ruling about a mother. She's making it a character assassination about a woman who says, well, I've just run a daycare for 3 years by myself. I've got no family because my mum's got Parkinson's and they all live 40 kilometres away. All my kids are at the top of the state. They can play the piano. They'll play you a Bach fugue. They do tennis, skiing, ice skating. They love me. They're affectionate. They've got music. They do piano lessons. They laugh. They dance. You know, we have a great time. There's nothing wrong here. And so this judge takes my character in standing up for myself and all the other women on the planet who were assaulted and raped and murdered every day and calls that grandiose political statements. And then she creates her own fucking section here because clearly, Leanne Turner, you filthy piece of shit, you are on Mars. You are tripping at this point because you've invented a category called questionable complaints. And here are what federal magistrate in the family law court, Leanne Turner, from Brisbane, ported into Sydney, had no prior carriage of our matter, and cuts the court days from trial dates from 4 days down to 2. And this is what she then says about my questionable complaints. This is federal magistrate Leanne Turner, ported in. Hi, Adam. You really need to read and see this to believe it. I hope you go back and look at the whole thing. This is, by the way, no one can see my friends list. Just in case you want to know, I've got privacy settings on my friends so that nobody knows anybody who I know, okay, because nobody's going to troll or do anything to me. I'm going to speak exactly the truth as I always have from the record. I'm going to keep saying it because there's something very wrong here. So when you go back and see this, if you possibly, I urge you to, if you've just dropped in, you'll go back and see what I've read. I'm reading from the family law court transcript where a judge who had no prior carriage of our matter for 2 years rules out of evidence 2 previous women who'd been assaulted by Ian Little, and then gives my 5-year-old to him. And we're going through her ruling, and the rulings are published, but they're not published under your real name. They're published under an approximation. So Farrow-Pryke and Friedman got done as Farquhar and Ferende or something like that to protect the child. But like right at this point in time, it is clearly in the public interest that this shit gets exposed because we've got a female judge in 2017 in a democracy in Australia, like, you know, prior to Me Too, but like I said, who gives a shit? Literally assassinating my character as a reason that she should give my 5-year-old to a man who's assaulted 3 women. No shit. Questionable complaints, she says. D1. The mother is not shy. Oh, I've got a mouth and I'm a woman. Really? The mother is not shy in taking on persons or authority if she feels affronted or does not agree with them. And you've got a guy with a cock called Donald Trump who's about to try and rule America from jail. And yet you're going to give my 5-year-old away after I've spent 4 years running a family daycare service with immaculate references and my eldest 2 out of 3 of my children as a single mother, not 1 cent from my family, not 1 bit of help, mother with Parkinson's. They're all at the top of the grade. I've run a daycare service alone for 50 hours a week for 4 years to bring them up. I've bought 3 houses by myself. And they're all happy and they've got amazing. Go over to Instagram. The entire truth in 1,600 videos and photos is there. Boats, rainforests, ice skates, tennis lessons, music lessons. Me. And so she calls me grandiose. And when I point out that women all over the world are murdered and raped and oppressed by men and that this court isn't believing a woman who's trying to tell them all about it. Some of these examples are as follows. In 2014, the mother complained to Augie's school, questioning why his report card was not as good as the mother had anticipated it would be, laying the blame on the school but concluding after 2 and a bit pages of complaints, please do not take offence. I know you have worked hard. Well, in 2014, my son was 5. And as I've proved before in these other broadcasts that you can watch down below because I've ported them over to YouTube, my son, whose father had just died of a heroin overdose, was being kicked. He just started kindy at Clavelli Public, where the associate principal was his teacher, and her name was Louise Gibson. And I spent 3 months writing to this cow, saying my son's being bullied in your class every day by a little boy called Wolfie, and he's crying in the bathtub at night, real tears. And whenever you turn your back to write on the chalkboard, Wolfie kicks him. And she says to me, and I write 3 months I spend writing to her because I'm working 50 hours a week running a daycare, so I can't just go down there and speak to her because I've got 4 other children to look after professionally from 7:45 in the morning, which I did without complaint. Regular spot checked unannounced every 2 weeks at the drop. Never knew when they were coming, never failed in 50 hours a week in 4 years. So I finally closed my own daycare for half a day, tell all the parents that I'm sick for half a day, but got a personal issue to attend to. I'll be back on board soon. And I go down there and I ambush Augie's teacher in 2014. In 2014. Louise Gibson, and I say, look, my son's being bullied by a little kid called Wolfie, and she says, no, she's not. No, he's not. I know about that. I said, can I speak to you, please? I just walked straight into her classroom and said, hello. And she looks up at me, and I said, can we just have 1 minute? And she turns around, everybody just sit still for a minute, I'll be back in a minute. And she walks out the class, and we're down at Clavelli, and I take her out in the hallway. I said, I've been writing to you for 3 months telling you that my son's being bullied by Wolfie and he's crying each night in the bathroom. I'm running a daycare up the road, so I've done everything I can. So I finally shut it, and I come down and I was like, stop that bullying right now. And she said, no, it's not. That's not happening. It's simply a nut. I'm sorry, Miss Farrow-Pryke. I said, don't call me Miss. I'm Ms. And she said, well, I'm Mrs. Gibson. I said, no, you're not. You're Ms. too. And she said, I beg your pardon. I said, you heard me. You're Ms. Gibson. I don't give a shit whether you've got a man attached in the wedding ring or not. You're Ms., right? You just with Mr., we don't know whether they're married. They're just men, right? So we're Ms., we're just women. We don't know. It doesn't matter whether you're married or not. You're just women. So, what year are you in, you fucking antique dinosaur? That's what I'm thinking. But I didn't say that, obviously. And I just go, no. So, Ms. Gibson, no, definitely my son's being bullied by Wolfie. He's being kicked. And she says, I know about everything in this school. I've been here for 20 years and I can assure you, if a pigeon poos in the yard, the children run up to me when I'm on playground duty and they tell me. I even know if a pigeon poops, so I would definitely know if your son was being bullied, so he's not. And I went, all right, so you're calling my son a liar or like an A-grade Academy Award-winning actor, are you? Brilliant. Okay. Well, you've had your chance. I wrote to you. It's all on the record for 3 times. I'm going up to the principal's office now and we'll see what he says or she says. And when I go past them, it'll be your local area manager at the DET. Well, the next week, Wolfie's parents were called in and guess who was actually kicking my son? And guess when it stopped? I walked past her to pick my son up later on that year from the school dance. And I saw her. I said, oh, Ms. Gibson. And she went... put her nose in the air and walked off. I said, I think you owe me an apology, don't you? No. So just in case anyone here thinks that I'm all women are great and all men are not, that's never what I've even vaguely said. In fact, the only 2 times I was fired from major organisations, it was women who were doing the absolutely wrong thing, and one of them was at Greenpeace. But that's another story for another time. So this female, Leanne Turner in the Federal Magistrate Court, is telling me that I went down to my son's school and had the audacity to talk to his teacher about him being bullied, and I was right, by the way. But Federal Magistrate Leanne Turner cites this in a family law court case as questionable complaints. So she's totally fucking missed the memo that I was correct and my son was being bullied. So you would more correctly, Leanne Turner, you stupid fuckwit, you would more correctly call this evidence that the mother loves her child. Augie. who I now haven't seen for 3 years, just like my daughter, and who has been given to a man who abused me and 3 other women and doesn't want to come to the Sydney Symphony Orchestra and Brian Cox explaining the universe with giant pictures of the origins of the universe in the Sydney Opera House with the Sydney Symphony Orchestra playing at the same time, which I bought 6 months ago, and I've been trying for 6 months to get an answer from this welfare state that's stolen my child, despite the fact he told them for 3 years that he wanted to come home. While there was a murder going down and my mother died and I was bleeding and I'm fighting a family law court case. Sorry. In 2015, the mother complained to Madeline's childcare centre about the child not being put into a more mature room when another child called Nico was put into that room. Well, Nico, it says here, had bitten everybody. And Nico was literally quite autistic. And Madeline was clearly not. And I just went down and asked how the centre chose to deal with it. Centre chose to deal with it. And in 2016, the mother complained about the family report writer. That's in the case of Madeline Little, where the report writer said that she should, at 5 years of age, be taken off her mother and her half-brother Augie and be given to a man who'd assaulted 3 women on the police record of New South Wales. In 2016, the mother complained about the family report writer not taking into account the family violence issues, which resulted in numerous lengthy emails to the ICL, that's the Independent Children's Lawyer, the Chief Federal Circuit Court Judge, well, that was John Pascoe at the time, and I've got his phone number, and he's calling for a royal commission, by the way. Want his phone number? PM me, I'll give it to you. It was given to me. And he told me to get on to Heidi Davoren at the Brisbane office of the Avanti, of the ABC, and I have. She's not calling back either. So again, today I tried Julia Baird because she's a mate of Steve Kinnane's, and Steve Kinnane's a lovely guy who's an old mate of mine. But he's in Europe as the European correspondent, so I'm just bit by bit chipping away, trying to make sure that these people get the full scope of what's going on here, because, of course, you then have a nervous breakdown losing a child to a man who's abused you, and then the state welfare system steps in and steals them off you because you're unsupported, you don't have a husband, you don't have money, and your family's suing each other and murdering each other and fighting and dying, and you're bleeding, and so they go, oh, I'll give them to someone else, like, against all logic and evidence of what's best for the child, which is to be kept with their parent. And, you know, like I said, in all of these other, I am going to repeat myself quite a bit just in case anyone comes in and watches one of these alone instead of all of these pieces I'm doing to camera, so you get the full story, is that, you know, at the same time they step in and say, he spent 3 years telling caseworkers that he wished to be restored to me until my own sister gave him away. Elise Johnson gave him away, tried to give him away to a foster carer called Yale Michelle at Mona Vale, and the only way I found this out was by taking them to court, them being DCJ, who used to be Fax, who used to be Docs, and subpoenaing all of their material by myself. I did this all, and this is the first time I've ever asked for money, because I've been doing this now since Tim Friedman first put me through it as a sperm donor when my daughter was 3. So Alice is now 18, and therefore that makes it 2008 that he first did this, despite the fact he's got 4 sperm donor children to 3 different women himself. And Ian's got 3 to 3 as well, Ian Little. The mother justified her actions by stating that the family report is fundamentally egregiously flawed and contains gross omissions of fact. Well, it fucking does. By Lucia Vardenega. It absolutely does contain gross omissions of fact. And that's all provable because the police record of, Ian Little, and again, Tim Friedman aided and abetted this by withholding Alice from me for years and years, despite him having 4 kids to 3 women and constantly not wanting to pay $120 a week child support. When, on one weekend alone, he won $300,000 betting on horses. And on Colorado Plateau, his mum's a lovely woman, so he fucked that relationship up between her and me completely as well by taking me to court We used to have a great time, Barbara and I. In fact, this like cinematic, horrible, like quite like tragic, really disturbingly tragic, very sad moment happened when he called Barbara Friedman onto the witness stand against me, would you believe? And I was self-represented. He had QC, so he was just sitting up the back. And everyone else in the room happened to be female. And all of the QCs and all of the lawyers, and myself self-represented. And Elizabeth Boyle, federal magistrate, swore her in, on the stand, saying, "Would you like to take an affirmation," etc. She sits down, and I haven't seen Barbara for quite a while by this stage. But I used to go to her house every Friday night with a bottle of wine and pick up my daughter, and God, boy, did we laugh. We really laughed. A lot. Everything was beautiful. Like, go to Instagram, everything was beautiful. Until these men came along and did this stuff. It's all totally self-serving. And I'd done everything politely and correctly and right, adroit. I had, as the Buddhists say, right mind. I was thinking straight, I was honourable. And so, she gets on the stand and I have to try and question her. And he'd misrepresented me as a creep for breastfeeding Alice until she was 2.5, and it's the best thing you can do for a child. But he called it creepy and tried to besmirch my mothering and character by saying I was breastfeeding my 2.5-year-old. This shit is real. So I go and look at her and I go to try to speak, and then I just become like this, but I can't speak. I just collapse in sadness and tears for everything that was and might have been but never would be again, given this constant erosion of my parenting and my love for my children. And it's all there, it's there in written evidence from my daycare clients. I had to run a childcare centre because the male-dominated GDP spends in modern democracies in 2023 still do not provide universal free childcare for women in Australia. So, you literally just have to go to work to pay a childcare bill, and I was alone. So I opened a childcare because I couldn't afford one. And so there goes my uni degree and everything I trained for. So I go self-defended to get back to the point, finish it, and Barbara's on the stand, Barbara Friedman, and you could hear a pin drop for the next 2 minutes in the courtroom because I just sobbed. Imagine putting a grandmother on the stand against a daughter-in-law who she got along so well with, and a sperm donor child. He's got 4-3, Tim Friedman. He's got 2 to Lauren Jackson, the basketball player, Order of Australia. G'day, Lauren. Hope you're watching as well. And another one to a woman called Louise Braithwaite. Little daughter called Camilla, who's about 14 or 15 now, down in Melbourne. So he didn't have any problem with those people being far away, but my child was the first, and he really developed a love for her. So $250,000 later, he dragged me for years and years through court, including when Mum died, and, Mum's stepbrother, who was a lovely man by all accounts of everybody, but by other accounts, quite a chauvinistic and controlling one. Definitely when you look at the fact that he murdered his wife and then tried to appeal it on grounds of extreme provocation, as if adultery was extreme provocation, so the judge laughed it out of court. So I'm bringing up these issues to get back to this transcript because people would think, well, how did she lose her children? And so I'm being very, very clear. And again, the entire project of this is push it around to documentary filmmakers and news filmmakers, and I'm putting the hat around because I've been doing this for so long by myself that it's exhausted, and I am actually nearly dead. You can probably see that. I really am. I'm tired. There's no rest for me. I don't sleep at night. I long for my children. All of the psychiatrists and psychologists reports say there's nothing wrong with her. She's just in perpetual major clinical depression because she's missing her children.
I mean, like, who wouldn't be? I mean, so you get to the point. Sorry, I'm just going to dive off on something else for a moment because it's pretty crystal clear. You get to the point, particularly at 52 years of age, where you say, well, we're all going to die anyway. And, like, I changed my vote to the voluntary euthanasia party after I watched my beautiful, kind, angelic mother die of cancer. And she never should have had to go through that. You put a dog out of their misery, but not a human. Over in Belgium, if 2 psychiatrists say you're too depressed, you can go now. And I actually advocate that. I really do. I don't. Nobody has a quality of life. I don't know who that is. I'm going to keep going. Ubuntu is the word. Nobody has a quality of life if you don't have human beings around you. You just simply don't. And I don't know who this is. I better go. I don't know who that is.